Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Science fiction, the great teacher, the great inspiration. It helps us see the endless possibilities of life. So let's be inspired together.
Come with me if you want to live.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
Sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Hello, welcome to Trekker Critique. I'm Commodore Jeff. So, I had some things I wanted to discuss here, and I thought now was a time here that I should add another episode here into this video chapter here. Okay, I know I haven't been making too many of these lately, because it hasn't really been a whole lot to really discuss. But so anyway, I think what I'll do is I'll start with the most recent thing that, science fiction, and I'm going to talk about season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Okay, and in my opinion, this season was a better season than the first season. Although, like I said, the first season wasn't bad. It was good enough to draw me back into the second season. Okay, which Discovery couldn't do, really, for the most part. I mean, it just, but it was good enough where I felt like, well, this has potential, So I came back for the season, and it did have, sort of a different degree of different kinds of stories in the season, which was nice. Instead of being trapped in the same story for 10 hours or 10 episodes. At least each week we had something different, okay? Something different going on. And they developed more of the relationship between Christine Chapel and Spock. Although at times I think the way they treated Spock in season 2 was a bit too childish. I think they should have kind of dialed it back a little bit for him, because they seem to forget that he is half Vulcan. And even though we saw Leonard Nimoy in the cage kind of smile or do stuff, a little bit, it wasn't so much that it was comical to, be like deliberately to try to make people laugh. It was just, sort of a mediocre thing where you might see he had some emotion, okay? But on this point, when they did it with Spock in Strange New Worlds, it seemed like a punchline to every joke or something like that, where it's sort of like when Data would be confronted with something human and he would sort of have some weird statement to say about it. That's kind of the way they made Spock in season 2, and I was really getting annoyed with that, because I felt like this isn't really Spock. Okay, Spock would not behave like he's some kind of a robot that has no idea what the hell they're laughing or something. He understands emotion, because Vulcans have emotion, they just hide them more. They hide them better, in some cases. Okay, but they made it too much like that for Spock, and like I said, that was the one part of it I think they should have dialed back some on with that. I like how they developed Dr. Mbenga. It made him, gives the character a lot of depth. I just wish that sometimes when they're fleshing out characters, that the only way they can flesh out a character is if the character has had some kind of trauma, you know, in the past that's made them with PTSD or something like that. Not every person on the planet has had things like that happen to them where, you know, it makes them an interesting person, okay? Interesting things can happen to people that don't have to be violent or, you know, chilling in that way. And I was, you know, I didn't really expect that, you know, Mbenga would be made like some kind of a warrior, you know, or something. And the way they had him, you know, basically losing his cool or having a, you know, making you think that he might have killed the Klingon that was in the episode that I'm talking about. I can't remember the name of it now, but I wasn't okay with that. All right, I figured that, you know, they should have at least tried to make some kind of an effort by both the Klingon and Mbenga to try to bury the hatchet without burying the hatchet inside somebody's skull. You know, I think they should have tried to, you know, come to some kind of common ground. Okay, that would have been more appropriate for Star Trek. Okay, as people trying to evolve and become better than what they used to be, where, you know, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, you know. So as a doctor, you know, Mbenga would probably be more open to that kind of a thing. No matter what personally happened to him, you know, Christine might have more of a problem with it. But I think between him and Christine, they probably could have had some really good conversation there on how they were going to deal with this situation, and maybe even the captain might have, you know, more of a guiding hand in it than they gave him in the episode. So I kind of figured that, you know, maybe that should have been more of the way they could have come to the ending of that story without having somebody wind up dead on the floor. Okay, because to me it just seemed too much like Star Trek 6. You know, where, you know, what's ratchet up the you know, the danger by having somebody die, you know, an important character die or be murdered. And it didn't seem like anybody was really that interested in investigating what exactly happened, like they did on the Enterprise in Star Trek 6, you know, where they were trying to figure out what the hell happened here, you know, and they were resolute in finding it out. They weren't so resolute there in Strange New Worlds, which is where I thought it was like, okay, that's, you know, I didn't like that. Security officer responsible for something like that happening on their ship, they need to be doing their job. They need to find out who is responsible, you know, and figure it out. And the two episodes that I really hated on Strange New Worlds was that fucking crossover with Lower Decks and the stupid musical that they had right after that. That right there was ridiculous, okay? On both of those episodes, okay? And I'm going to lay out why. Bringing the cartoons into this show might have seemed appealing to some of the Lower Decks fans, okay? But that would be akin to saying, well, you know, because we want to have younger audiences watching our stuff, let's bring Bugs Bunny and the other characters from Warner Brothers into an episode of Star Trek. That way the kids will be introduced to Strange New Worlds and see what it's like on that show, okay? That's how I felt like how things were being set up there. It was like they were dangling a carrot to keep using them, you know, dangling a carrot in front of the kids and trying to draw them into the show. Like, oh, let's see Bugs Bunny become live action. You know, it was a gimmick. The whole thing was a fucking gimmick. It was what it was for an episode. And the episode, the story itself was pretty cut and dry. It was like very flat. You know, it wasn't a whole lot of depth to it. It was just, you know, using a stupid portal when, you know, to go back in time by accident, and they end up, you know, meeting the crew of the Enterprise, which just seems to be happens to be the fan of everybody that's in Starfleet, you know, in the future, that we get to run, you know, so it just seemed really ridiculous. Okay, too many weird things going on to make that episode happen, that story to work. Okay, and the only thing was that if you don't watch that particular episode, you're not going to see some character development between Spock and Christine, which, you know, was kind of important in that episode. So they blackmail the people into watching that episode just because you're going to want to see what new things happen between those two in that story. Okay, that's really the only reason to watch it. The rest of it is just baloney. Okay, and I feel like it was, you know, it could have been treated better than that. I mean, they didn't have to start it off like it was a cartoon, like it was you were watching an episode of Lower Decks. They could have started it live action right from the get-go, and everybody who's a fan of Lower Decks could have understood exactly who these characters were and what. Okay, just by the sound of their voice, they'd have known. But instead, they did it that way, which was very off-putting. You know, I just like, you know, this is dumb. Okay, and then the only part of that entire thing that they were creating with the crossover that was even kind of funny was at the very end, where the crew of the Enterprise all looks like cartoons, and they're like, what the hell happened? How come we all look two-dimensional? That was the only part of that I kind of found a little bit funny, and that was it. Okay, that was it, just that. But like I said, it was, you know, I never liked Lower Decks because it's treated too childish, you know, it's made for kids, and it's, you know, they act like little bastards and stuff on the show. You know, that's not the way cadets or even ensigns are supposed to act. I mean, we saw, you know, an episode of TNG where they had, you know, crew that's low rank, and they didn't behave like that. Okay, they weren't like stupid little teenage bums and stuff, you know, they didn't act like that. But that's what they're doing on Strange New Worlds, and that's why I don't even watch it, because I feel like I'm watching The Simpsons or some damn thing, you know, and it's dumb. So I'll never watch that. I mean, if they're going to do animation, at least they could treat it serious or to some degree and still have it good for kids to watch, like they did with the original series, you know, the animated series, you know, of Star Trek. That wasn't done bad. It was okay. You know, I accepted that because they didn't hand it to you, you know, like you're, you know, getting a lollipop, you know, from the dentist or something, you know. That episode, yeah. So that's why I didn't like that one. The other one, the musical, all I can say on how I felt about it when I saw it was, anybody out there who likes the movie The Terminator or Aliens or Predator, okay, imagine, if you will, you're watching one of these movies in a theater, and all of a sudden the characters start jumping into a fucking musical right in the damn action scene where they're trying to kill each other, and all of a sudden they decide, oh, it's a wonderful day, and, you know, and then they start, you know, would that piss you off or not? Now be honest, be friggin' honest. After a franchise is set in stone for that many years, where things are made a certain way, and then all of a sudden they throw that in your lap, isn't that sort of like you know, like a pie gag, like somebody throwing a pie in your face just to you know, just out of spite? You know, that's how I felt when I saw that. I'm like, you know, what the hell am I watching here? You know, I really felt like it was a complete waste of my friggin' time to watch this bullshit happening, okay? And at the same time, they're trying to inject a little bit of science fiction into it, like they're being forced to do this, okay? Which still didn't make it any better in my mind, okay? I mean, it's like, well, they don't even answer why the hell this thing wants to communicate with people in that way. In the first place, they just keep doing it, you know? So it made no sense. And you know, a friend of mine, I had said that to, obviously got upset because he liked it, okay? He obviously liked it. And he liked it for reasons that really weren't so much connected to Star Trek, but to other things that he's watched in movies and stuff, you know, like musicals and things like that. So he likes musicals. So when he watched this on there, it was a treat for him, I guess, because he got to see that. Yeah, I do like some musicals. I don't like all the musicals that were ever made. I mean, I've seen Mary Poppins, I watched Xanadu, I watched Grease, you know, I've watched, you know, a whole bunch of musicals, you know, and the reasons that I could sit and watch that is because it was presented to you as being that way. I mean, that's what it was for. And you knew going into it, it was going to be a musical that has a story wrapped in it. It's not a story with a musical wrapped in it, it's the other way around. A musical with a story in it. With Star Trek, you know, it doesn't work. Okay? Even if you're trying to make it a part of the plot or part of the problem in the story, it still doesn't work because you got these characters doing something that you have never seen in years of Star Trek. And I know people keep referring back to that TOS episode where they had that friggin' hippie band that showed up. That wasn't a musical. That was just people, you know, they bringed aboard the ship and they were just playing music, okay? But it wasn't forcing the crew to act like friggin' idiots, okay, whenever they were around, okay? It was just themselves. It was just the band that was making the music. So you can't really say that's a musical, okay? Forget it. Okay, that argument doesn't hold water, okay? But this was made to be a musical. And even though the characters are acting like they didn't want this to go through it, they made it look like they enjoyed it, especially with Uhura, who seemed to relish singing and stuff like that, okay? Which made it worse because it's like, well, this is something they all wanted to do. They all want to sing and dance and do all this stuff, okay? Just basically redefine what a Star Trek episode is, okay? Now, I don't know, you know, what most people thought of it. I got, you know, some feedback from other people that, you know, on another website or something that said that they got mixed reviews or something. It was you either liked it or you hated it. You know, you didn't. There's no in between with this episode. It either turned you off or you got you know, entertained by it. So I guess I land on the side that I didn't like it, you know, because I certainly wasn't entertained by it because I cringed at every moment they were doing these damn things, and I'm like, okay, I hope they don't do this again. Okay, this is going to be the last time. It's just like what happened on TOS when Spock was tap dancing around Kirk's head. Stupid, bad moment in Star Trek. Every fan, I think, will tell you that that was the dumbest thing they ever see in Star Trek. Okay, I don't know of anybody that ever said, "Oh, I enjoyed that. I love watching Spock tap dance around." Well, no. Nobody ever says that. Nobody. Every Trekkie I ever met never said anything positive about that episode, except for that one scene where Uhura and Kirk almost, well, I don't know if they really kissed, but they almost looked like they kissed. Okay, they had that one scene, and that's the only scene that episode is ever noted for. Everything else they would just assume you didn't see. Okay, because it's that dumb. Well, that's how I felt about, you know, this musical here I'm talking about. You know, there were some reasons to watch it because it had that B story going along with it with Chapel and Spock. Okay, again, blackmailing you into watching the bullshit. And so I felt like, you know, that's the second time they did that. You know, normally that would have said, okay, enough is enough. I'm not watching any more of this shit. Well, I guess because there were so many other good episodes on it, you know, I was hoping that they, you know, the last episode of the season would be an improvement, okay? And it was, but it was an improvement that went in the direction of where a lot of fans don't like to go, and that's in the dark area. So that takes me to the last episode of the show, and it was basically to deal with the Gorns. Now, let me remind everybody, in case I haven't said anything about this before, I don't like the way they portray the Gorns in Strange New Worlds. They are not lizards that run around on all fours and put eggs in people and stuff to burst out like an alien. That's a total rip-off of Aliens, okay? I don't like that. It really pisses me off that they borrowed that from Aliens, and nobody, James Cameron and all them, don't even say anything about it, okay? I don't like that. That's stealing an idea right there, and just making the Gorns in place of the aliens you saw on that. That's what they're doing, okay? And they did that. They did so many hints to that, to various parts of the Aliens franchise in this one episode, that it was making me sick. Okay, really it was. I really felt like punching the damn screen, because they just kept, jamming something in there. You know where they got it from. Okay. And the only good thing was that they didn't actually show the big battle that happened on the planet that wiped out thousands of people. Okay, they skipped that, which, normally in Star Trek past, they probably would have wasted 50 episodes on just the fight alone. Okay, but this time they didn't. They see that the Gorn come, they go to a commercial break, and when we come back, the planet is wasted. Okay, so we missed all the fight. In that, I was like, okay, so we won't have to waste time with that. Then this is the episode where they introduce Mr. Scott, who's a young man, a young ensign, and he happened to have crashed there on the planet during this shit, and he's managed to survive pretty much on his own, with little help from others. There are some other survivors, but they're not many. And the ship that Pike's girlfriend commands is destroyed, but she and some of her crew are on the planet's surface, where they just happened to be at the time the attacks happened. So with very little warning, the Gorn have pretty much done everything pretty easy. Like, it was no challenge at all for them to wipe out, the Kyoga and the colony on the planet. Okay, and then they made an ultimatum to Starfleet. They put up a line basically saying, you cross the line, we're going to war. After they sent out a signal where they were to be found. This is sort of like what happened in that episode of the original series, The Arena. Okay, where the Enterprise is drawn to a planet, and they beam down. They find out the planet was attacked, and there's Gorn waiting there to ambush them. Okay, that's sort of like what happened here. They were using that tactic to draw a starship there, okay, and ambush it. Figuring that they're not gonna want to leave survivors behind. They knew that. So the minute they find out that the humans are going to launch some kind of a rescue mission, they could claim, oh, they violated our condition and now we can go to war. That's what they want. They want to go to war with the Federation. This was a setup. And so, the episode plays out like that, and then you see that, Pike's, girlfriend, she's been got one of them things in her, the Gorn, or inside her, or breeding inside of her, okay? She's, it's, you can see on her arm, the marking on her arm where she was, I don't know what you've been impregnated by it or some damn thing. I don't know what okay, but she's compromised. And, she's sort of like saying, well, I'm dangerous, don't bring me back to your ship, I'm dangerous. And Pike doesn't want to listen to her, so it's like, what we're seeing is sort of like what happened in the Aliens 3, where Ripley was violated, and basically she's carrying around an embryo of an alien. Well, now this woman here's got an embryo of a fucking Gorn inside of her. So it was sort of like, again, harking back to Alien 3, which again, like I said, I didn't like that. Okay, and the story really didn't have a whole lot of depth except for that B story part. Again, going back to Spock and Christine, where Spock is really scared that Christine died on the ship, because that's where she went, but she actually survived in some of the debris, believe it or not, in a small part of the saucer that's still got an air pocket in it and still has some systems working, and she's in there, okay, and trying to, save herself. In the meantime, that little section of the ship happens to be part of the plan to get some people down, or to get some people off the planet back to the ship. If it distracts the Gorn when they see this big thing burning up in the atmosphere, then they can slip by and the Gorn won't notice them, you know, getting beamed up. So, and at the end, they basically, you know, they basically rescue some of the people, but then they find out that some of the people they thought they had beamed up did not get beamed up to the Enterprise, except they got beamed up into the Gorn ship. The Gorn transporter snatched them out of the transporter matrix on the Enterprise, and now they're on board with the Gorn now. So now they got prisoners over there, and they're attacking the Enterprise, and Pike has a choice to make, and that's where they said to be concluded. Okay, so a hell of a way to end season 2, because what's going on in Hollywood right now is you got this strike going on, and it's going to hold up the works. We may not even see part 3 of that episode for probably a year or maybe more, you know, depending on how long this fucking strike goes on. But because they haven't done anything to film it, you know, so it couldn't happen at a worse time. It'd be, imagine Best of Both Worlds Part 1, and then you'd have to wait a year and a half to watch the other part. Okay, fans always say, well, I don't know how you people could sit and wait that long, you know, to watch another episode. It's like, well, back then when we had a season, it was more than 10 episodes. Okay, we had like 20 something episodes in a season. All right, today it's all different now for whatever reason, but that's the way it is. So like season 1 and season 2 would be a season 1 for us when we were kids. So anyway, that's that. Let me go to a commercial break and be right back.
ゴジラ-1
I want to tell you something. A long time ago, a man showed me how to predict the future. Our foundation to save humanity was born.
You are the future. That's why Legion wants you dead.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Everybody, welcome back. So, as I was saying, the season 2 of Strange New Worlds, you know, was not bad. It was pretty good, even though I had a problem with those 2 episodes and some issue with the last one there. So you know, it did a lot better because, like I said, they had some variety. And even though I didn't like the cartoon thing and the musical, they still swung for the fences. You know what I'm saying? They still tried to do something original. Okay, even if it was a miss, at least the writers are open-minded enough to try something different. Okay, and I give them kudos for that, because up until then, the writers from Discovery and Picard just weren't interested in doing anything different or new. It was all just either nostalgia oriented or just plain old garbage, grim, depressing fucking stories, one after another. That's all we got from them. But here, when we got Strange New Worlds, at least the writers are starting to think outside the fucking box, which is good, because that's the way things used to be on TOS Next Generation, is that you didn't know what you were going to get. Okay? And even sometimes, you know, when you got sort of like the absurd, you know, like Q making the crew look like a bunch of Robin Hood characters or something, it was still fun, okay? And it had a point. And you would never see an episode like that again, probably. And that's, you know, so again, you know, I'm glad that they tried to do something outside the box. I'm sorry that they did the things that they did to do outside the box. That's a little too outside the box for Star Trek, I think. I think a little less of it, they might have done better, but maybe they're just feeling it out, you know, to see what the fans are willing to swallow. Okay, and maybe they'll do more of that, but they'll learn that not to go too extreme on the silliness one way or the other. Okay, so it's just, like I said, at least they're thinking outside the box. So I'll give them credit for that, you know, that they're trying. That's more than I can say for the last 10 or 15 years of Star Trek that's been put on the big screen or on TV, you know. Okay, so speaking of movies, I finally got to watch the Flash movie, okay? Okay, yeah, I know a lot of you people will say, of course, that's like months ago. Well, yeah, it's true, but I don't go to the opening night to a lot of these things. I waited until I could rent it on a streaming service, which I did. And it didn't take long to get there because apparently it didn't do very well in the theaters, in the box office. And I'm not sure why, okay? But the movie wasn't bad. I think what some people probably didn't like was, you know, the whole, you know, coming together of multiverses and stuff like that into it kind of complicated the story just a bit. Okay, it's like trying to introduce some new concepts to science fiction fans, which they've never seen before. You know, and even in the Marvel universe, they haven't really done that to that scale yet. I mean, they've done, you know, they had like, you know, end games, all that stuff. They had these big battles and stuff, and they had some time travel in there, but they never did any multiverse kind of stories, and you know, until they did the Doctor Strange movie, which I don't know if that really got a whole lot of attention either, okay, because I think there was some confusion there. So this is certainly a new area of science fiction that we're still paving our way through to make more acceptable for audiences. Some people think they're never going to do another one of these kind of movies again, okay, and that would be unfortunate, because I think that, you know, if you give writers some time, they can probably find a way to work these kind of stories out so that way they're more acceptable. Now, I think on television, where you got the CW and you had some of these kind of stories on a lower budget scale being told, it seems to work better, except the fact that they don't always take it serious. They make it sort of funny and, you know, and a little bit silly, but they seem to handle that kind of a story concept a bit better on a television scale, which is kind of weird. You think on a bigger budget they'd be able to really wow you with it, but I guess it's not always the case. It's the writer and the time given to them to do a story, you know. With this, you know, I think a lot of people were going into this movie, The Flash, expecting it to be another Batman movie, which, even though Michael Keaton came back to play Batman, he wasn't the central character, this focus of this whole movie. It was about the Flash, okay? And that was the part of the movie that I didn't find very settling, because the Flash character in this movie is portrayed as goofy, silly, you know, sort of comical, and he's acting alongside Batman, who's serious and, you know, introverted and stuff like that. You know, sort of a real mismatch, okay? And it doesn't play well in the story. But being how the Flash is really the only character that I could think of in the DC universe that can actually do what he did to actually screw up the whole fucking multiverse, they really didn't have a choice, I think. You know, without bringing in a new character which we'd never seen before. But I think that this movie, The Flash, was supposed to be the last addition to the what do they call this, Snyder DC universe, of comic book movies, where this was like the last time Ben Affleck was going to play Batman. In fact, it really, because at the very end we find the way the story ends up, George Clooney comes back as Batman. Okay, so it was really, you have to see the movie to get what I'm talking about. Okay, but as far as the entertainment value of it goes, it was very entertaining to watch. Okay, it had a lot of for those of us my age, you know, some flashbacks to, you know, the late 80s and stuff like that, you know, Batman and things like that. You know, Michael Keaton, it was nice seeing him back in there as Batman. And it had a lot of visuals that were pretty wow. In fact, I don't know, you know, if they actually brought some of the actors back from Man of Steel, or if they were just, what do they call it, AI or something, I don't know. But they tried to redo parts of Man of Steel, because not only do they're traveling through different universes, but through different time periods, okay? And at the not the very end, but during the last act of this movie, we get to be introduced to all the people who played Batman, all the people who played Superman, all the people who played whatever hero there is in the DC universe, because each one of them represents a different multiverse, a different reality. You know, you have the Christopher Reeves Superman, who has his reality, and you got the George Reeves Superman, who lives in his reality. You get what I'm saying? And then, of course, you got all the different Batman actors, and so each one of them is a person from a different reality of Batman. And all of that is up for grabs at the end. And Flash is the only one who can fix it all. Okay, which means he has to basically go back and undo one important thing in his life that he tried to undo in order to get his mother back. And he tried to save her from being shot, which screwed up the entire continuity of the timeline. And an interesting thing about this movie is something that, you know, Michael Keaton's Batman explains to the young Flash what he had done. Okay, he actually draws from Back to the Future, using that, you know, because apparently and Back to the Future is something that exists in all these different realities. Okay, it just has different actors playing the different roles. But anyway, he asks Flash, "You've seen Back to the Future, right?" And he says, "Yeah." And he says, in that movie, when they go back in time to fix something, the change begins from that point where they went back, where they ended up moving forward, which creates an alternate reality. His idea is that not only do you change the future, but you're also changing the past, because that future has its own past. When you go back in time and altered reality, you're not just changing what's to come, you also change what's been, you know. And I thought that's an interesting concept, because I never heard anyone say that before, that if you create, you know, like say, you know, if I, you know, like I drop this, okay, and things go on, but if I pick it up and I don't drop it, not only do I change the future of what I did, but also the past leading up to it. It might be just a slightly different past, but it's a past that's had to be created to mesh with the future you just created. Okay, and I think back to that Next Generation episode where Worf was bouncing around to those different timelines, okay, or different realities or timelines or whatever, okay. In each instance where he would change, remember, something in his quarters would change, right? Meaning to say things happened even before he ended up there that changed the past, you know, and that even though he's at the present, his presence there will change the future, but his past, the past of that future is already different from the past he came from. Okay, so I think that's what he was trying to get at. It's not just that you're traveling through time, but you're actually creating other realities as you travel through time. So like in Back to the Future, when they go back to was it 55, 56, I guess it was, to go get that comic book, or that what was it, not the comic book, but that, you know, that almanac, the almanac of the games that were going to be won in the next 100 years or whatever the hell it was, okay, the sports almanac. And he has to get it because it would undo Biff becoming this big, wealthy Donald Trump fucker, okay? So he goes back, gets the almanac, and they go back into the future, and things are different, okay? And and so even though they were in that future had a past of its own, okay? But, you know, of course, he skipped all that when we got there. He didn't see how everything developed after that. It just changed everything. It had a different past, and it's got a different future now. So that was an established new reality, another multiverse of Earth, okay, just by that. So when you watch Back to the Future now, with that little bit of information that was disseminated in this movie, The Flash, now you can look at it in a whole different way now, because now you know that they didn't just, those three movies were just about traveling through time in the same timeline. They were actually creating new realities as they went, and which is why in Back to the Future 3, Michael Keaton ends up in a future that doesn't look anything like the future that he started from in the original 1985. He ends up in an alternate 1985 still, because of all the things that they had been doing in this movie, created a whole new reality. You know, his parents, you know, are all different and everything, and the family life looks happier and stuff. Okay, so everything is all changed, but he's still not living in the right universe, because, I mean, once you leave it and you start tampering with time, you can't really go back to it. There's no way to go back to it. Okay, and so he'll always be out, you know, lost in this other reality somewhere. And as far as the Doctor there in the Back to the Future films, he may not even be the Doctor that he left behind in the Old West. He could be a Doctor from a different reality who came into the future and caught up with him. You know, because things happen a little bit in the same way, just slightly different, which separates the different dimensions, which is why they are unlimited. There is as many unlimited realities in existence as there are stars in the sky, okay? You can't, there's no way to catalog them all or to know which ones you're at, you know what I'm saying? It's just, unless the changes are so grand, you won't notice that you're in another dimension. And that's how it kind of started with the Flash, you know, a little bit. He figures he's back home in his proper time, and then all of a sudden he starts noticing some weird inconsistencies, like, well, this didn't happen that way. He sees, like, you know, a movie an actor he knew played it, somebody else is playing it. It's like, oh, wait a minute, he didn't play that role. You know, and that's how he picked it up. It's like these little subtle hints out there that you're not in the right reality. You're in a different reality. And now he figures out this timeline didn't have a Superman. Okay? They have a Supergirl who's been locked up since birth in some you know, covert government agency in America, but they never had a Superman. They didn't have any of these other these people. It's only been Batman, and that's Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton's Batman was the only superhero in that reality that they have. Okay, and that's why he goes to him to get help and ask him what the hell happened. And of course, Batman is as intelligent as he is. With, you know, he already knew basically what happened, you know, by explaining it to the Flash. Okay, just saying, you know, this is what you did. If you really fucked everything up, it's like he took a bowl of spaghetti and showed him this is what you did, and he dumps it on the, you know, all these different timelines now. They're all, you know. So yeah, it was a really interesting point in that movie that I thought that was really interesting, how the writers kind of, you know, I don't even know if that even comes from anything proposed by any theory of science, you know, or something like that, if that, or if they just come up with that idea for this movie. You know, I don't know, but it does give you something to think about if you're into these multiverse things, that maybe time travel isn't really traveling through time, it's jumping from one dimension into another. Okay, along different points along the same, you know, time. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So like if I jump from this point in time into another universe, that universe might be going through 1950s Earth. Okay. It would be completely random, you know, I guess, in a way, because these other universes experience time in their own speed, and things develop either quicker or slower, you know, depending on what things happened in those time periods. So you might find 2023's Earth to look very futuristic, you know, where we got hover cars and we got all this other stuff going on that we don't have right here now. Or you might end up in a 2023 where the Earth has been devastated by nuclear war, okay, and there's very few people left alive, okay. It might be a horror show like that, you know. But in different points in the timeline, it's going to look different, okay? You know, different points in the multiverse, I should say, not the timeline, but the multiverses might all be moving along at the same speed, but individually they look different, you know, either drastic or subtly, whatever, okay? So, like I said, it's still kind of a new concept. And the reason why it's new is because Hollywood has been inundated with fans bitching and complaining, why did you get rid of this actor playing this character? He was a good actor, and then you replace him with this jackass and all. Okay, and the only way I think that a lot of these writers could shut up the fans was by saying, well, don't look at it that way. Just look at it as this is a different timeline or a different universe, and we got a whole different Batman, a whole different Superman, and they're playing, and you know, this is their version. Okay, and I think that was something that when they stopped and they thought, okay, I guess I can do that, you know. That's what they had to do with Star Trek. To bring us all the way back to the beginning. This is what they had to do with Star Trek, when they did the Kelvin timeline, okay? They did that story under the original intention of saying we're redoing Star Trek. This is a reboot of the series, right? Okay, the minute the fans saw that, they said, no, we ain't doing that. This is not Star Trek. So in order to legitimize what they had done in that first movie, then they came out after and said, well, this is a different reality. This is not the same timeline that we've been watching, you know, Star Trek for all these years. This is a different one. This is an offshoot of it, okay? And it was created, you know, Spock going back, and now this is how things ended up, okay? Kirk's got a different future and a different past, and you know, the Enterprise looks different, you know, designed by different people or something, you know, and different ideas, and you know what I'm saying. So you know, that's how they explained it all away, because they went too far with trying to make it unique to the individual director, J.J. Abrams, that they insulted the fans because it looked too different from the Star Trek they remember, okay, and it didn't have anything to do with it, okay. And I think that's kind of where things began with that. So now, whenever you see, you know, a remake of something, people will say, this is another version another reality of this of this character. Okay, that this is why it looks different. This character is going to have different adventures because this timeline, this reality, I keep saying timeline, this reality has different events happening in it. Okay, that's how Hollywood is explaining this to people who are fans of certain long-running shows. Okay, and I've been hearing that being used a lot. They're trying to use it to fix Star Wars in a way, I think, but it's not working with the Star Wars fans because that kind of stuff was never really introduced in Star Wars in the past. Time travel and all that shit. It was basically just a flat-out fantasy, science fiction, action adventure thing, but it never really dealt with the theories of science in there and everything. It was just what it is, and you have to accept it. Okay, we're not going to explain to you how this lightsaber really works. We're not going to explain to you what hyperdrive is and how it really works. We're not going to do that. You're just going to watch it and accept it as it is. Okay, we're not going to do that. That's what Star Wars is. Okay, it's like Lord of the Rings. They don't tell you a damn thing about how any of that shit happens or works in Lord of the Rings. You just have to accept it, that's what goes on in this world of Lord of the Rings. Okay, now, so Star Wars really can't go and start that shit in by bringing Star Trek-esque kind of explanations to explain away why the last 3 films that Disney made were so terrible because of the fact that they deviated so far away from their original characters and stuff. So it's not going to work. The fans aren't going to take it on that. You might get away with that with Star Trek because we've done some weird space travel kind of stuff in the years that Trek's been around, so you could use it for that. But like I said, that's kind of why Hollywood has been doing this shit now, is because they just tired of getting complaints, I guess, from fans and stuff from these legacy shows that's been around since the 80s or the 50s or whatever. They just want them to open up their mind a little bit more and just say, well, look, we can't explain everything, okay? We got different people out there who want to do movies like this, and they want to put their brand on it, okay? They want it to look more a signature of them that did it, okay? And even though you guys aren't going to like it, we can't really say no to these people because, they earn their place to be a director in this movie, and if they want to put their label on it, then they got every right. So if you want to see J.J. Abrams and whatever they call Lens Flare Abrams, you're going to see Lens Flare Abrams, okay? Whether it was ever used in Trek before or not, it's going to happen, okay? But that's what Hollywood is doing now, and I think in movies like The Flash that I saw, it can be too complicated for average audiences to watch, which is why I think a lot of people were kind of turned off by it, because it really, for 2.5 hours you're sitting there and you get this mind-boggling climax to this movie that you really can't explain even to yourself, even as you're watching this play out. It really is kind of an anticlimactic moment because you're not really there. You don't really understanding, what's going on, okay? And that's unfortunate because, I could understand to some degree better, I think, than some what was happening. But it just, as a viewer, I could also understand how so many people wouldn't know what that is because this is so new to them. They don't understand that. So I think with this movie, they went way into this thing with multiverses and stuff because of the Flash and what he did. But like I said, the movie is fun to watch. It's not bad. It ain't great, okay? But it is fun to watch. And believe me, there's a lot of other things going on in this movie that will make you laugh, make you cry, and really get your interest up and to watch in this. So it is worth watching at least once, okay? And it's too bad that it didn't do better in the theaters, but like I said, it's not one of those things where I could say, oh, they didn't like us, it was woke, and it was all, no, it had nothing to do with that. I really truly believe it was just the way the story was played out in that in that movie was just, it was a little too overly complicated for the average moviegoer. Even for the kids who like comic book stuff, I don't even think they could really understand that themselves, which is unfortunate, because if you lose the kid aspect in a comic book kind of movie and stuff like that, then you really kind of gone a little too far off the rail here with it, you know, because you've got to have it at least understandable to the youngsters out there who are buying the action figures and all that shit, you know. They have to know. They got to know better. So I think in the future, if they do these kind of comic book movies with other like Marvel or DC, other characters, they really ought to try to dial it back a little bit more before you start really getting too complicated with it, you know, because it's kind of hard to follow. So anyway, that's it for today, and I hope you all have a great rest of the week or the month or whatever, how long it's going to be till I see you again. But you can always see me on my other videos, Ordinary Talks, Phase 2, where I'm usually on there almost every other day or so. So I'll see you all again, and take care of each other, and I'll see you. Bye-bye.